Hello and welcome to Badge Chat, our first Badge Chat show and tell live on air in definitely a couple months. I think we've only done one in 2018. It's awesome to be doing this and really excited to be joined by a colleague with whom I get to work really often, Josh Kusch. And Josh, thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, so glad to be here, Noah. Thanks for inviting me to hang out today.
Absolutely. And, I really appreciate you taking the time because you had an opportunity a couple weeks ago to attend a pretty neat convening of an intimate group of people, but a lot of thought leadership really happening. And, can you just kind of in a quick 30,000-foot level for folks who are unfamiliar with, the conference you had and maybe even have never even heard of IMS Global, just, what was this conference that you had a chance to attend?
Yeah, so IMS Global hosted a digital credentials summit in Phoenix, which is, I think, maybe you might know this, Noah, but that's where they're headquartered, maybe? I don't know. Anyway, it was in wonderful Phoenix. I got to visit there for a couple days and hear just what some of the new things that are happening with digital credentials are. Part of their focus this time, which was a particular interest to me, was their trying to have conversations about how to facilitate connections with local businesses through these digital badges.
And that's probably a great segue for you to let folks know just kind of who you are and what you do so that they can get a sense of the lens you brought to the conference. And real quick before you do that, for any of the folks who are joining us live, we are with Josh Kusch, and you can feel free to tweet in your questions on #BadgeChat, and I will make sure to ask those questions to Josh live on the air. So Josh, if you want to kind of share, who you are, what your role is in Aurora Public Schools, and that lens that you brought to this conference.
Yeah, that's great. So as Noah said, I work with Aurora Public Schools, and I'm our specialist for programs and partnerships, particularly focusing around our digital badge program. And so we have a badge program here where we are highlighting, helping students earn credentials as they develop 21st century skills in and out of the classroom. And in my role, I'm helping to facilitate the connection with local businesses. How can they inform the badges that we're issuing to students, as well as how can we get them connected to the local workforce through actual internships or jobs, and or even just career exploration for some of our younger kiddos.
Absolutely. And so folks who are looking at the Aurora Public Schools digital badge program, when you're seeing those endorsed badges and all these companies that are lining up to say, we recognize and value these skills and are going to open up doors of opportunity for you, you are looking right here at the man who's making those relationships happen.
Yep.
So now that we kind of know who you are in that lens, especially it makes a lot more sense for why you were especially keen to attend this particular IMS Global quarterly meeting, given the focus that they did. You were saying before we went live that there were about 12 different sessions throughout the 2 days.
Yeah, it was jam-packed, and so we went from session to session, and just hearing from leaders, international leaders, really in this arena about the different badge programs that they've designed, how they develop those. We heard a few presentations from local businesses and other industry partners who either use badges or have helped design badges, or even giving input on how their HR processes work. So how can we align badging with the hiring processes that they have in place?
And, I think you really touch on something that comes up in a lot of conversations with folks when they're new to digital badge credentials is, is this a K-12 fix for the real world that the real world never asked for? And I hear you saying, no, this is happening in the real world, whether K-12 and higher ed get on board or not.
Right. Yeah. And it seems like, everyone has recognizes just that skills gap, right? And so I think we are trying to find new and innovative ways to identify those important, essential 21st century skills that students and young professionals are needing as they come into the workforce as well. There are models where folks are able to advance in their professional skills within their industries and earning digital badges to help them take that next step in their career as well. And so we heard from both kinds of thoughts on the 21st century essential skills end. A lot of it was there, but then also on some other more practical how to use different Microsoft program end of things too. But it was definitely
skills.
Yeah.
And okay, are you able, as long as we're on that topic, I hope I'm not throwing too much of a surprise question at you there,
Yeah,
Josh.
let's see.
On that sort of workforce side, what was some of the work that you were hearing that was being shared to folks who, might even be completely oblivious of any of the work happening on credentialing in the education space, but where they're using it actually internally?
Yeah, so a lot of the folks that we heard from local businesses, Microsoft, IBM were both represented, and they have pretty extensive um, badge systems that their employees are able to do different development and training during their time there. They can use work time even for that and advance even in their roles at IBM or Microsoft. I think it seems like I don't know. No, but it seems like some of it, like mainly IBM was maybe internal, and Microsoft did have some classes that even folks outside of the organization could take. Don't quote me on that, but I could get you in touch with someone who knows.
Yeah, Microsoft definitely has stuff external that a lot of consultants are doing it. And
Yeah.
did they? I'm curious. I would be curious. Did they mention? I've read about an IBM partnership with Northeastern University where self-directed learners can be taking some of these IBM modules and earning credentials, and they actually get credit at Northeastern University. Is my
Yeah,
understanding correct on that?
you are understanding, and they did have a presentation with that, and so that was really based on the college's desire to credential some of that prior learning. So they tied into the prior learning assessment that many schools focus on, and this school has a pretty major push in that way, and so they use some of those IBM modules and badges to identify what prior learning the students had before coming, and like kind of what you were describing. There's just seems to be a great partnership there for both the students' benefit and also getting the IBM credentials out there.
Awesome. And again, for those of you who are just joining us live, feel free to tweet in your questions. I'm definitely refreshing the hashtag badge chat. And so if you have any questions for Josh, we'll get those answered live on the air. So you kind of, I really appreciate you humoring me for a couple minutes on digging into some of the stuff that I'm really geeking out about. What were you geeking out about while you were actually there, boots on the ground at this conference?
Yeah, so when I found out about the conference, and the theme of this year for just developing those business partnerships, I was super excited just because that's the role I'm in, and every conference I've been to is a little tangential to what I do day to day, and so this was really kind of fun to be around folks thinking about the same things that I think about day in and day out. Some of the standouts for me, just a personal takeaway, I would say, like there are people who are doing great work across the country, and I think I get in my own little box sometimes, and I'm trying to wrestle through things, and I think I realized that other people are asking the same questions that I'm asking, and so just to feel a part of that community, I was like, hey, there's people we can tap into to help inform our work. We can all work together. I think that was helpful for me just as a professional, just to know that that we're not alone, and Noah, you've said that before in different ways, but to actually be a part of the conversations, to meet some of those folks. I came back and I told my boss, we need to be in these conversations more often and learn from each other, and hopefully all kind of grow this work together, figure out best practices, and so that, I mean,
it sounds like you almost went from being
cool.
like the Martian, the one Martian, to finding out that you have a tribe and you found your tribe.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really awesome. And so digging into, some of the work that your tribe was sharing, I know that you mentioned specifically some of the work at Central Oklahoma University. What about that really kind of blew your mind?
Yeah, so there were a couple presentations, including that one from Central Oklahoma. I loved that their program was system wide, and that's really what we're shooting for as well. And so to see different models that were at that scope, I think was really good. They were also documenting more of the essential 21st century skills, which I think was comparable to what we're doing here in APS. I think a couple things that stood out for me from their presentation was they've developed different levels of badges, everything from exposure to mastery. So in each of their main categories. They had all those different levels of badges. So a student could, based on the experience or whatever they were doing, earn a different level of badge. And one thing that I thought it was just really cool that they do a bunch of campus events around some of these themes. And so by students attending those events, they were able to categorize that and capture that with an exposure, basically, badge. So it wasn't saying that they've got that skill down necessarily, but they have been exposed to some ideas. They've begun wrestling with it. They've heard some conversations. And I think that's a really great way to document that kind of engagement. And I feel like it represented that engagement really well. But then they also had more mastery level badges too. I think there were 3 or 4 levels total. And so just to see how kind of they parsed that out. So it started just with that exposure, they attend event, but then the mastery had much more engagement with those different topics, where a student would have developed a presentation or a paper or service project where they engaged that topic more fully. I think
so just to make sure that I'm following what you're saying, Josh, and
yeah.
just so you know, your computer's shaking a little bit. I don't know if
okay.
If the table's getting bumped or what, but so do I kind of hear you saying that whereas in a lot of systems that we've seen so far in this space, you know, where it's more of a binary, you either have it or are still working towards it, that at Central Oklahoma, they're kind of going with this tiered approach of saying, you know, it's not just have you shown proficiency, but, you know, are there kind of levels along the way, I guess, without necessarily thinking of them as levels, that they're kind of going even more granular on some of these things and saying, you've shown an interest and we're going to notice, name, and even credential that.
Yeah. And I think that's a great way to describe that that process that you were just saying. I think it allows for students to begin earning badges and to begin to see how some of those experiences culminate into their overall development, which sometimes if it's binary, like you were describing, they don't even see kind of the little steps that they're taking. And so it was really cool to see how their program kind of tracked all of the steps from the beginning to the more complex mastery.
I really love that because especially at the college level, you know, showing mastery might take a little while longer, right? And so that by, you know, credentialing some of those, as you said, the little steps, it allows, you know, some, I guess, rewarded behavior, right, earlier in the process. And I'm curious, I'll be really curious to follow their work and see if they find that it results in the engagement being sticky, right? That they get this early exposure and they stick with it because they got the badge kind of early and often.
I think that might be part of their strategy, would just be to get the students kind of earning the badges and making it attractive and sticky for the students. Yeah, I like how you worded that, but I can't remember if he had any numbers on that process a little bit. He might have shared a little bit. I can't remember.
Awesome. And for those of you who just joined us, we are live with Josh Kusch. He is on Twitter at PWR_Kusch, KUSCH. If you are not watching live, you can certainly hit him up on the Twitter. You can also find him through Aurora Public Schools at Aurora K-12. And Josh, you know, so you shared a little bit there about the Central Oklahoma work. What else kind of really got you excited that, and glad you were there, that you think about?
You know, one piece that I would pull from Oklahoma before we move on from that, like the other takeaway for me there was he said the expectation for faculty that they would issue a badge for one assignment throughout the year, and I liked the model that he set forth. We're working at APS to try to figure out what's a reasonable lift for teachers here as they're issuing badges, and how do we do that? How do we not place too much on teachers? And their solution to that was just ask them to pick one assignment. And so they would grade it according to their grade rubric for the class and all of that. But then they would also take that assignment and grade it a second time according to the rubric set out for whatever badge that they had identified towards that. And I think it was at that level that then a student could earn, a different one of those badge levels based on the grade for whatever that assignment was. But the teacher could determine what aligned best, which we kind of do as well. But it was just that one focused focus time, and in that way he felt like it wouldn't be too much of a burden on teachers. And so I think we'll take that back here at APS and kind of wrestle with that and see if that might be a model that we could use. But I thought that was really intriguing, just to go, hey, can you just do this once for us? And if each teacher is doing it once for each of their students, and the students will have many opportunities throughout their time in college to earn those mastery level badges, as they're getting it from all different angles. So I kind of like that. Thought that might be something we should consider here at APS.
Interesting. It almost feels like every instructor, at most, we're just asking you to dip your toes in the water. Don't ignore it. Dip your toe in the water. We're not asking you to swim, but because everybody does it, it provides access to all learners.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting approach.
Well, yeah, and then the teachers definitely needed the rubric, the badging rubric for their grading of that assignment, right? And so if it had these certain characteristics, then it fell into this category, that category, obviously. But I just thought it was an interesting approach for sure.
Awesome. So what else? I know that you took a lot of notes while you were there. What else really resonated with you?
Yeah, let me flip over here to some of my notes and just see what stood out to me here. The other thing that I thought was really interesting. So IMS sets some of the standards for digital badging, just kind of what are the best practices. And so they just launched maybe last month, but recently, Badge 2.0, and what are the expectations for badges, and what are the good standard practices for badges to fit into this kind of next level of badging. And they have a lot of influence within the badging systems, right? And so it was fun to hear what their IMS's expectations were for Badge 2.0, and then hear how the systems are trying to accommodate some of that so that they're compliant with the new badging. One of the key things I think that's rolling out with Badge 2.0 is this idea of endorsement. And that's something that we at APS have had going since the beginning, but hasn't necessarily been integrated into every badge system. So the fact that according to kind of the national standards, that's a piece that can be and should be included into badge systems, I think really affirms the work that we're doing. I think it also is going to be a good checkpoint for us to kind of go back to their standards and go, okay, what does that look like, and make sure that we're aligning with some of those national standards. So what does endorsement mean from a national perspective? They might even have models for us to consider on the different kinds of partnerships for our businesses to participate in. And I think that, again, that can just help our work go forward without us having to develop all those things on our own. But really, really excited that this idea of endorsement, this idea of a third party affirming this skill and being able to document that granularly in the badge, that's, I think, really significant in the badging work moving forward.
Totally. And shout out to Kim, if you're still watching live. I saw you tweeting earlier. If you want to post a link for folks on the hashtag badge chat to share out a link to something digestible about the new 2.0 spec that Josh is talking about, I'm sure people would really appreciate that. And I think for folks who are, kind of jumping into the sandbox and some of what Josh just said went way over your heads, that's okay. It takes a lot of repetitions for stuff to not be scary and intimidating. You might have been encountering, words like metadata. And so that might be kind of a jumping off point for what Josh was just talking about. There's now sort of standards coming out from IMS around, hey, when we're looking at endorsement, this is how we should standardize that, no matter what platform we're using. Or how you're issuing badges, this is the way to do it, to kind of include those endorsements and badge assertions, which people can probably learn about on the same link that Kim shares if she's with us. So go ahead, Joshua. What else do you have for us? And again, for folks that are watching live, feel free to throw out any questions you have for Josh about his time there. We do have about 10 minutes left before we're going to let Josh get back to his family. But what else really blew your mind, Josh?
Yeah, kind of one, I guess one reflection, and then I can get back to some of the content. But there were a handful of K-12 folks who were attending the conference, but we are definitely in the minority. It seems to be that higher ed has done a lot of the lifting on moving badging forward, and I think there's some great lessons that we can learn from that work. But I do think K-12 is a slightly a different environment. So I think we have some unique challenges that higher ed doesn't face. And so I'd love to be more part of the K-12 conversations and help help connect folks who are working in that K-12 sector to kind of wrestle through those questions. We're dealing with minors, we're dealing with folks under 13 even. So how do you share badges where in higher ed, that's just assumed they're adults, they're responsible for themselves and their academic records, but that's not the case for us. So how can we make sure that we do that responsibly? And would have loved to hear more about that. But it is kind of cool that we are making progress in that way in the K-12 arena. And so there was a little bit of pride going, you know what, we're in the conversation here. We're making some changes and making things work. And there'll be more K-12 folks joining there. We were just more in the audience than on the panels this time. And so maybe next year we'll have some representation to share some of the learnings that we have too.
Awesome. And before I let you go on with sharing any of your notes, Kyle in Utah asked about any tips that you have for successfully approaching businesses about endorsing badges.
Yeah, as we've done it, we've really tried to tap on what the needs that local businesses are bringing to the table, right? So what are their felt needs and how can we in education with badging help meet those needs? And what we've heard and what we focus on with our badge program are these 21st century essential skills. So as I hear about those companies, about what they're looking for in their coming workforce, it's a really easy transition to go, hey, we are documenting those very same things and wanting to help produce a record of student learning around that. And so as much as you can kind of align with some of the felt needs of the businesses that you're talking to. And if you're in the designing phases, design a program that connects with those felt needs with the businesses that you're talking to.
Totally. And what does it look like for you, Josh? And I know you know that I know this, but for the folks who are watching live who are saying, well, how do I go up to a business? They've never heard of digital badges, and I'm trying to convince them this is something they should care about, and this is something they should endorse, for their, future talent pipeline. What does that conversation look like?
Yeah. It kind of depends on where they're starting from, but sometimes it can be a good starting point just to say, hey, these are kind of like Girl Scout or Boy Scout badges. Students are doing behaviors to demonstrate skills and learning in different ways, and we are consolidating that. We're grabbing that, capturing that data, and storing it in an online platform. And so maybe the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts do have all this online now. Maybe, I don't know, but most folks are familiar with they're familiar with that idea, and then we can just kind of translate it to, we're also doing that in the classroom for really important skills that students are learning. That gives them a framework maybe to understand kind of what they're thinking
about. And one thing I would point out for any of the higher ed folks who are watching this, whether you're live or asynchronous, is that there's some kind of very similar work to Aurora's in the higher ed space on the essential skills credentialing. Yeah. You might want to check out with the reach out to Don Frazier. He's Frazier DE on Twitter at the at Design Lab, and they've been sharing out some great work. You could probably also find it on the ORA Open Recognition Alliance call from I think 6 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago. Find us on Twitter. We can definitely get you those links. But good question, Kyle. And Kim, shout out to you. Thanks for posting that link to an explanation if folks are interested about the Open Badge Spec 2.0. Josh, sorry for interrupting you there. And again, if anybody wants to throw kind of an outro question at Josh, you still have a few minutes to do that. Otherwise, Josh, do you want to kind of share, maybe just 2 more kind of stuff that light bulbs for you went off, or any kind of highlights from you from any of those sessions you attended?
Yeah. Again, referring back here to my notes, there was so much good content, and I'm glad that I captured some of that here in my notes. Let me go back here and see what stands out to me as we're chatting.
And do you remember off the top of your head, Josh, the person who was championing the work at Central Oklahoma?
Yeah, his name is Jeff King.
Perfect.
King.
Just in case folks were wondering to get in touch with him and hear about his work that so inspired and impressed you.
Yeah, and I was able to grab him for just a couple seconds after his presentation. He was super helpful, and I imagine would be willing to connect with anyone who wanted to. Let's see here. You know, this is one thing that we've kind of kept in mind during our program here at APS, but it was good to hear as well that this needs to be industry-led, and I think if we in education are trying to do something that's helping students be prepared for the workforce, then we need industry input on that, and we need to make sure that we are connecting with the industries that have some of those felt needs. So they're looking for employees in different ways, and that came up in a couple different sessions. They did have a panel of local HR reps and talking just about how we can collaborate better together. And I think in that that was definitely highlighted just the need to just to get their input on what these badges are, but then also kind of what roles they're looking to fill. As much as we can have that open communication or develop those channels of communication, I think that will only make our work more effective as it's helpful for students. But it's good to kind of hear that and hear different people talk through that as we move our work forward.
Awesome. And there was this is sort of an in the weeds question for you,
Yeah.
Josh. Since endorsement is such a big feature, was there any discussion about a timeline for the release of the new endorsement spec?
So I think this the spec has been released, if I am correct, and I do think that some of the major platforms have already released updates in their platforms to accommodate some of these new specs. There are a few folks. Let me see if I can find them here. Who did talk through how they have already done that or are moving toward that, and it sounded like IMS released that to them earlier this year, even last year, so that they could try to make those adjustments in time for this conference and share kind of what work that they had done to align with the new standards. Let me see. I'm not finding it in my notes, but Credly was there saying that they have that opportunity now within their system. I think Badger had that done already. Conference notes are never as organized as they are when you were there. When you go back and look at them, it's like, I don't know where I put that. Looks like Acclaim was doing that. Credly.
Folks don't know, Acclaim is the platform that's partnered with Pearson.
Mm-hmm.
And folks are looking at Badger. There's no E in Badger, just BADGR.
Yep.
Incredibly with a Y. You know, Josh, I can't thank you enough for sharing all this information with us. And again, if folks want to connect with Josh, he might have a little bit of false humility here. You know, he over the last few years has wrangled closed in on 60 businesses and community organizations partnering with Aurora Public Schools and endorsing digital badges. Or have you hit 60 or close in on 60?
We're close. We're closing in on 60. We're almost there.
Almost 60 endorsing partners. So he definitely knows what he's doing with it. Feel free to connect with him. Again, he is at PWR_KUSCH. And really appreciate you taking time to share with us. You know, I know I was really enjoying following from a distance and learning on Twitter about all this great work out there. And hopefully some of these folks will be willing to share again at Badge Summit. For folks who are interested, you can learn about Badge Summit at bit.ly/Badge Summit. That's bit.ly/Badge Summit. And that'll be happening June 23rd in Chicago, Illinois, all day. Nothing but digital badges and micro-credentials, access and equity in downtown Chicago the day before ISTE. Hope you'll be able to join us. APS will have some representation there as well. And Josh, again, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy afternoon to kind of debrief and share your own kind of thoughts with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Noah, and thanks for all your partnership and the work that we do here. Really appreciate you as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much. He is Josh Kusch at PWR_Kusch. I'm Noah Geisel at Senior G. Thanks everybody who watched live and tweeted along with us. And to those of you who watch this on YouTube, we appreciate you as well and look forward to connecting with you in the future. Have a great and badge-worthy week, everybody. Bye-bye.